Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Influential You podcast. My name is Josh D'Amigo, and I'm your host for this weekly podcast. Sorry, I didn't hit the right button. All right, starting over. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Influential You podcast. My name is Josh D'Amigo, and I'm an Influential You consultant, senior program faculty member, and your host of this weekly podcast. At Influential You, we teach you how to launch, grow, and scale your business and amplify your professional influence. Since 2009, we've helped thousands of business owners, executives, and entrepreneurs become more influential, more rewarded, and more you. Over the last 10 years of this podcast, we've built a collection of stories from individuals who found satisfaction through our advanced education and shared their stories in interviews. This season, we've been revisiting some of these classic tales. We've shared original episodes of the Influential You podcast, which was hosted by our CEO and co-founder, John Patterson, and I've been sharing some key takeaways that I learned from listening to each of the interviews. Today, we'll revisit our first interview with Influential You client, Kim Corbett. Released in February of 2017, this episode features John's interview with Kim Corbett, where she shares how what she learned through our studies helped her double her income and move her company's market position from number 57 to number 1. Top performing and motivated salespeople are going to love Kim and her determination, and I know you're going to learn a lot from her journey. During this episode, you'll hear references to Influence Ecology, which was the original name for our organization, and another way of saying you are the company you keep. And that is still a big part of what we teach to our clients and our teams today. Enjoy this episode, and I'll see you on the other side.
This is quite an honor, so thank you for inviting me.
Well, you are welcome. Well, it's our pleasure to have you. And what we'll do is just start with having you introduce yourself.
All right. My name is Kim Corbett, and I was born in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin. I am one of 4 children. I was the first girl in the family. My entire family still all reside in Wisconsin, except for myself and my son. I live in Illinois, central Illinois. I currently work in the healthcare industry, diagnostic imaging to be exact. I'm an account executive. People have called me a turnaround agent. I would call myself an expert in turning around failing or challenging markets. It's become a hobby of mine. I actually enjoy it. It's quite a challenge. And I've done it several times now for different companies. A diagnostic imaging center in one of the Chicago suburbs. I took it from the top revenue producing modality, they call it, and took that from number 57 in the country to number 1 in a very short period of time. A lot of it was using the tools that I learned with my study with Influence Ecology on really taking the time to study a market and look at because there's always the projections and the numbers that a company will provide that I'm part of. But then there's the other things as far as, okay, what are some of the other aims of the company? What are my aims financially for my income? And really see what the market needs. And I really learned a lot of that with Influence Ecology and took the time to study and create a plan where in the past it was more of just get out there and make a bunch of sales calls and make it look good and scurry about and stress, because it gets overwhelming because you're told, especially at the beginning of the year, okay, here are your numbers. And many times it had been increased, quite a bit for the next upcoming year.
Well, that's great. Kim, I'm excited to talk to you because of your role, what you do, that you're a turnaround agent, that you doubled your income here at Influence Ecology and even more than that from time to time. And I think it's great that we have a person who's a sales professional on the podcast with us. I think we've had some others in the past, but we haven't really focused on the whole world of selling. And I'd love to turn some attention to the world of selling, because so many people in our programs work in sales in some regard. We all work in sales in some way, shape, or form. But I thought this would be a really great opportunity for us to look at what you've accomplished, some of your early journey where you were first naive, how that turned around over time, what you learned and all of that. So if you're game, I'd love to sort of focus on the world of professional sales. Are you up for that?
Yes, absolutely. How fun.
I spent many, many years smiling and dialing, right? I spent many years smiling and dialing, and there are people that avoid that like the plague. But the truth is we're always selling, and as we say, we're always transacting. In other words, we're always attempting to have other people comply with our invitations, our offers, our requests, judgments, assessments, assertions, and the like. And we want people to comply, because if people comply with those things, well, life gets better for us. And as you know, we say, those who transact powerfully thrive. So in terms of your early days as a sales professional, in fact, you could say before Influence Ecology, what was your focus? What'd you work on? You know, when you picked up the phone or when you went to a day's work, what was it like then, say, as compared to now?
Probably the biggest thing was you're told to, all right, make X amount of sales calls per week. And it was anywhere between 40 to 60 in my industry. And before Influence Ecology, I was always stuck in a particular salary and income range, and I couldn't break that. And I didn't know why. I thought it was a flaw of mine, my personality. And I was perplexed by that. The structure was, okay, here's your territory. Here's what you have to do. Here are your numbers. And my biology would go into a state of panic and overwhelm. And then I would just get busy like Pavlov's dog. I wouldn't even ask questions about it. I would just think, okay, I wouldn't do any thinking. I would go out and network with a bunch of different organizations. It looked good because I thought in my mind, if you were working really hard and almost like a martyr, that was admirable and stressed out. But yet my numbers weren't showing it. And so I always thought it was a mystery that, okay, well, if I think about it really hard, it'll just all turn out kind of thing. And I did a lot of self-acting and more of interacting than transacting. So I would work on the company goals. And sometimes I would get into that state of panic and get really pushy and forward and borderline obnoxious with customers because it was all about my numbers and my company's needs. And so that didn't work. So I wasn't building the type of relationships that I now have. And when I get into the interacting part, I was pretty positional and righteous and kind of would buck heads with management. So I looked like a bit of a rebel, that I looked like I was defiant and I wouldn't follow the rules. So it wasn't working. So there was a period of time I just thought, okay, sales isn't for me. And I would give up on that. And I thought, okay, I need to do something else. It's just not in my blood. It's not working out.
And so in the absence of a pathway, did you also try harder, try different approaches, try to imitate the people around you, try to act like the people around you, try to take the same actions like the people around you? Where did you go, again, before Influence Ecology, to get how you might approach this differently?
I just continued to work harder. And I withdrew and I would suffer in silence. I would never admit that I was struggling and suffering, that I didn't know what to do.
Got it.
So I just added my hours. I added more networking events. I added more things for me to be involved with.
And so then you must have then seen a huge impact on other areas of your life, your family life, your time to rest or recover or play, or what happened there?
Absolutely. Oh, yes. I mean, the stress on my health, my finances weren't going anywhere. And it was a vicious cycle because I thought, okay, if I just stuck with it, if I took on more responsibility, if I looked good, if I filled those reports up, surely someday somebody's going to come to me and offer me a promotion.
Yep.
So it was all this wishful, hopeful thinking. And I was miserable. I was completely miserable.
So then when you first began to participate here, and by the way, was I the person that registered you in the program? I cannot remember.
Yes.
Okay. So what did I say, if you remember, what did I say that had you say, yeah, I should do this?
I was already participating in a lot of self-improvement and development programs, and I was still not seeing results. I was still broke and I still had health issues. And then when you called me and said you were working on, there was two words. There was the accountability structure. And I thought, okay, I need to be surrounded by people, who are working on some things and that we have an accountability structure. And then you started talking about subjective versus objective. And I thought, okay, that got my attention because I thought I need some concrete goals. I needed something to work on and I needed to figure out the gaps, like what was wrong with me. And then I knew I was ambitious. I knew I wasn't lazy and a failure, but I couldn't articulate it. That was enough to captivate me when you said that about the accountability and the subjectivity and being objective and doing the work.
For just a second with the subjective and objective, I think I know what you mean there and how that may have occurred to you as something distinct or different. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you?
Well, for me, and I really wasn't clear on it, and I had to really look into it and read it because I knew it was calling to me, but I thought what I was doing was creating a lot of speaking and possibilities of being successful and working on my flaws. But then as far as being objective, I thought, what does that really mean? And I thought, I've never really sat down and said, what do I need financially? What do I need for my income? I mean, I knew as far as goals for weight loss and such, but actually to have something concrete and then work on it and have an accountability structure.
Okay.
And say, okay, if I have an aim for 6 figures or whatever it may be, how am I going to do that? Instead of it just being a pie in the sky, okay, throw it on the wall, see if it sticks.
So subjectively, it sounds like you were at work on some different narrative, some different affirmation, some different declaration, some sort of ontological or psychological shift, something more of the mind that you would change and then life would turn out. And what you tended to see here was that it was both subjective and objective, which includes the practical, the actionable, the statistical, the actions and so forth. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly. And I didn't have the two to marry them together. And I didn't know how to do that. And I couldn't find anything like what Influence Ecology offered for me to go to work on that.
So then you got introduced to Influence Ecology. You said yes, you started to participate. And in the Fundamentals of Transaction program, what did you begin to discover had been missing?
Within that time frame, I was working for a newer position. And I never included myself in my work, in my career, in my position within a company.
What do you mean by that?
I'd let a company interview me and tell me, here's the job, here's what you need to do. And then I would just do it. I wouldn't after I started Influence Ecology, I sat down and did the work of how much money do I need to make? What's important to me? What's important to me as far as my quality of life? How much time do I want to spend with my family? What hours am I willing to work? And I got very precise as far as all of my priorities with my chief aims. And even how am I going to fit exercise in with my work schedule? I never did all of that. Just thought all I was going to do is go to work and just be busy and hope it turns out and I make that money with my targets. So I included myself in my aims, but it wasn't from a selfish position because I also really sat down to understand for the company what is important to them, what was important to all the people that I worked with, what was happening with our market. I never sat down and looked at what are the aims of other people, not just the company, but the people in themselves and the immediate relatedness and in the relationships that I formed were something that I never experienced. I was always very friendly with people, but this was immediate. For instance, in the one company, the team had been there and very loyal for almost 10 years, and they risked closing the center because it was doing so poorly. And I found out what was important to them was they never made the company offered collective bonus for the operations team. So I thought I made that one of my initial aims with that company. I was the first person in their history there taking that on. And that formed a complete alliance. So we worked together as a team for both of our aims. And so they ended up, before I left, having 3 rounds of bonuses. And that was pretty motivating. Most of the time in companies, when there's an operations team and a sales team, there's usually friction. We were known in the nation. They would talk about us because of the wonderful dynamics that we had and the success. And it was based on working with the people and understanding what their aims were and what motivated them. I never did anything like that before. It was quite profound.
If you'd like to know more about us, go to influentialu.global and explore our courses, consulting, and conferences. We offer a 4-year curriculum for those seeking an advanced experience. However, if you're brand new to Influential You, we recommend you start with Thrive. It's our self-guided training. Thrive is a self-guided program that lets you learn at your own pace. Thrive members enjoy weekly live e-coaching sessions and an ever-expanding library of exclusive video lessons with our faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. You'll get proven proprietary tools to accurately assess your career and develop a realistic strategy to achieve your aims faster. Your membership also includes chat access to faculty, plus discounts to our transformative conferences. Sign up today and use promo code 30DAYS for a free 30-day test drive of Influential You's Thrive program. That code, 30 days, and you may cancel at any time.
Let's turn our attention again back for just a moment to the world of professional sales. I understand how it was in the beginning, and I got a sense of what you confronted. But on a day-to-day basis, if I'm a sales professional and I want to do what Kim did to double my income, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would I do? And if you can talk about that in terms of fly on the wall, what are you actually doing? What are the steps? How are you using transactional competence in those steps? And if you can give any examples, I just want somebody to be able to walk away and go, okay, I'm going to be able to go out and do much better per what Kim had to say about what she does. So can you tell us about that?
Sure. Fortunately, the company that I worked for had a lot of analytics and reporting and statistical historical data that, I used to take advantage of it, but I really scheduled time before I ever went out to do any kind of sales calls. I understood. I did so much inventory and pre-sales planning, like to a degree that I never thought of, because I thought I have to have accurate thinking on, all right, I know that these particular people are our customers, but really, what does that mean? Where are we going? And what did they do in the past that worked and didn't work? And then I understood it at all levels, from operations, from sales, and I scheduled time more so than ever before at the beginning. And they actually even laughed at me and said, they just said, you're way too analytical. And then after they saw the success, they said, okay, we want people to do what Kim has been doing, because then they started calling me, I was Kim, like a dog with a bone, because I could then hone in and know exactly where I was going, and I wasn't overwhelmed. And then I knew, okay, for instance, if one of my aims and target for growth was working with attorneys on a particular project, and I created an event, and it was boring, tedious work to fill the seats for this event. And I knew within a certain period of time, I had to do first the accurate thinking and then the deliberate practice of, all right, by this date, I had to invite 120 people. And then I threw in some of the weapons of influence we use, the scarcity by this deadline. And so I had to do very tedious, boring work to fulfill. And I always would meet the target of, let's say, filling that particular program because I prepared for it and I did the deliberate practice and I accepted that it wasn't going to be fun. And the other thing that was probably one of the most instrumental in my career change was with something you taught me at the very beginning. You transact for help until you are satisfied, no matter how much and how many times you have to reach out and ask for help. I was somebody, and I was known as a small child to be very stubborn, and nobody could tell me what to do. And it was embarrassing for me if anybody ever pointed something out that I did wrong. So I was never going to reveal that I needed help. Mm-hmm. I went to some of the top performers in the company and I asked them, how do you do this? There was times I called, I don't know how many people nationwide, and it got the attention of the vice president of sales. Because she admired that I took the time to ask instead of, I really owned my territory. It was like my business, but I think that's why I was successful, and because I asked for help and I didn't pretend to know something like I did in the past. And I do it now in my current role. I went to the number one. Hey, I have an aim and a goal here to be number one. And I said, right now I'm riding at about 2 or 3. And she laughed. She said, I don't care. As long as I stay in the top 3, being number one, everybody's always looking at you. She reaches out to me for help and acknowledges and compliments. So we have so much fun. And I make a game of it too. That's the other thing. I used to be really serious. I mean, I take my work serious, but I never thought that combining having fun and making it a game too, and acknowledging people that I work with and such. There's so many little parts of it as what I do on a day-to-day basis.
So very good. One thing I've got a question about is the personality that you identify with, because when I reread some of the notes that you sent to me, I remember thinking, oh yeah, she's not a performer. People are in sales roles are what we might call a performer, that personality, but you're not a performer. You identify as the personality judge, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This is really good because I'm having several thoughts here as I'm talking to you. One is do you want a job? 2 is, as a judge in a sales role, as an analytical person to begin with, you've described some things that make sense to me, given that you're a judge in a sales role. But anything that you want to share with us about your journey in first discovering that personality, accepting that, or glamming onto it, or resisting it, or whatever you did, how did that begin to impact your transactional competence?
Oh, that actually is giving me goosebumps as you're talking, because I had a physical, biological reaction when at first I thought I was a performer and then an inventor. And I thought, no, I'll just keep studying it. And it really helped because the more I studied it about myself, the more I understood other people. But my study group through Influence Ecology, they really got to know me and they said, you are a judge personality. And I resisted it. I hated it. And then at conference, I started watching different people with the judge personality, and I thought, that is me. It took a while. I had to bring out my sense of humor about it. It was hard at first. And then I started kind of embracing it, and I attended every possible focus lecture training series on it so I could understand it instead of resisting it. Then it shifted to a bit of freedom because I've been that way since I can remember. My parents even said if something happened to them when I was little, they knew that I would run that family. And I didn't like that responsibility, but I thought, wow, that's an honor. And I had some freedom because I didn't have to change the parts of me that there was a lot of positive about being a judge. Before I started identifying, I could be very cold, calculating, harsh, quick to judge, reactive. My emails were sometimes, I didn't even realize I was doing it. And I would I would just get something out because I needed some facts. I needed something done and I needed it done now. And I had no room for any pleasantries whatsoever. And I was in one of the Influence Ecology courses at the beginning. And thankfully, the woman that I worked for, she pointed out to me, she said, you might want to add a little bit of relatedness in your emails. So in the past, I would have been defensive and I wouldn't have listened to that. I asked her for quite a period of time to help me. I said, I know that that is an area of weakness. So I probably for months, I would ask her to review my emails, and I still catch myself. I still ask for help with that because I used to think, wow, how can a judge be in sales and business development? And it's paying off now.
That's great. It's really well said. I want to go back to I love that you said this because I identified with it. You said, I would show up for work in essence and you have 40 calls a week you needed to make. And that was the world, right? That was life. And you would do all kinds of things to get that done. And then you went to work on yourself to get more effective, more efficient, whatever the case may be. So what does it look like now? Are you still sitting down to make 40 calls in a week? Are you more effective? Do you do so much work on the front side that you just kind of go in and slam dunk 5 people instead of, 5 out of 40? What are you doing now?
First of all, when I started and I had my immediate director came to spend time with me in the market, I knew my mentor and trainer told me that we had to do, the 40 to 60 or whatever. Plus, I have just about the entire state of Illinois. So there's sometimes my weeks are 1,000 miles of driving. I had my director with me. We happened to be doing a presentation at one of the physician offices, and she gave me some feedback. And I said, I've got to ask you, I am not going to ever produce any type of quality work and provide any type of service doing 40 to 60 calls. And so she made it clear it was quality versus quantity. So I got her buy-in. And then I went to a training recently, a technical clinical training, and I spent quite a bit of time with one of the vice presidents, and I shared that with her as well. I didn't want to be self-acting again and just I'm going to do it my way. I first got buy-in and understanding that they knew the amount of time that I focus on. First, I'm a patient advocate, and then second, quality and value. I got her buy-in, which was very important. So that was one thing. And so I'm in constant communication with people, which I haven't done like that in the past. I manage 20 hospitals in Illinois. And at the time when I first started, there was 8. I called my direct report and I said, I just want you to know when you see the sales reports, I spend an entire week at one customer. I said, and here's why. I said, the amount of volume for this particular procedure is going to just completely alter this market. Where we may get one particular patient per month from this doctor, he's talking 2 to 3 a day. And so I communicated in advance. So I don't even go by numbers anymore. And I look at how do I impact the community and how do we touch the lives of patients? And what do I need to bring in, whether it be a dementia clinical study? And then I work it from there. And they don't question me because I'm one of the top performers. I'm in the top 3 for the 4th quarter in the country. And I've only been there since March. Like I said, I over communicate to people in management so they know that I'm their partner.
Yeah.
And I transact with them to let them know. So I couldn't even tell you now how many sales calls per week.
Well, I think we got a good sense of how it's different now. And so I'm also curious about the trust that you've gained from people, because obviously it would take something to gain their trust. And you use the word buy-in 2 or 3 different times in different ways. And since we're speaking in the jargon of transactional competence, you could say they accepted your request or you presented something and they accepted and so forth. So in terms of the identity that you produced with your managers and their trust in you now, is there anything that we should know about that journey?
Yes, at the very beginning, even in the interview process, I've never interviewed as I'm doing now since I've learned through Influence Ecology. And so I understood their transactional personalities, and I knew that there were certain things that I wanted to develop from them that I had gaps in. And so I had a lot of respect and admiration for them going in, which I never created that with an employer before in the past. There was almost always like I hate to admit this, almost like a teenage rebellion, defiant person in the back.
Yeah.
Like they're the employer, I'm the employee, and I still want some power and control. That was gone. I didn't even, because I thought, wow, I'm the best employee that I have ever been in my life. And so one of the examples, we have weekly team meetings, telephone conferences every week from our region. And at the beginning, I was quiet. I wasn't known, and people would kind of be quiet sometimes on the phone call. And I would always participate fully on those calls and ask for help. And my director was so appreciative of that because I was participating. And then if we were studying a particular sales training, conceptual selling, and I would show enthusiasm, and I would call her throughout the days when I'm driving, and I would share success. And I would be so passionate. I said, I've got to tell you, I said, I've been selling and in business since I was 16. I thought I was done. And I actually was a bit taken back when you said I had to do this because I thought I should know all these things. I said, but I would share that with her, and the trust and the relationship I built, because she said most people call her to complain. And so I just did all these little things, and I would share my triumphs with her and then acknowledge her and thank her. I would publicly acknowledge her because I knew that was important. Acknowledgement was important to her. Those are things that I never would have thought of when I was in my self-acting and interacting role in the past. So those have helped tremendously.
All right. Well, very good. Well, Kim, there's one last thing here. You say, I've always said that if you're going to work, you should seek to find something that you enjoy doing. And hopefully at the same time, you can do some good for people. Who's that a quote from?
That is from the link that I gave you for this 100-year-old surgeon that still shows up for work. And he has been in medicine for 65 years, and he's still mentoring and training. And so that's why I added that link in there for that website, because I thought, wow, I listen to people when they talk about retiring, and I thought, no, I love to be continuously learning and contributing. And my dad always, and he still says it, that find something that you love. And then this gentleman takes it a step further as far as doing something good for people. And so that's why I included that, because I thought that's what I live for. So my aim, I look at and study, how do I live to be 100 or 120? And I actually read about it, but it's not from just to live to that and suffer and just keep my lifelines. I study people who are still thriving at that age and what's possible for humans. So that's why I included that particular gentleman, because that keeps me going. That makes me set my aims for something bigger.
Me too. I identify with that myself. I think the last thing I'd like to do is just ask you a little bit about the community of people here at Influence Ecology. You say you found a community of people that you want to grow with, grow old with, deep friendships and all of that. Obviously, you're passionate about many things. Anything you'd like to say about the people of Influence Ecology, or transactional competence, or transactionalism? So any of those things you'd like to talk about?
Yes, about the community of people. I knew when you invited me to take a look at doing this work, I knew I was ambitious. There was nothing really wrong with me. I just had some gaps to fill. I didn't quite know what did, influence ecology. What's ecology? And I thought, wow, an ecology of people and a community of people that were ambitious. And the more I really got into it, I thought, wow, there are people who are ambitious and who are willing to help. And I have formed some friendships beyond anything that I've ever had with people around the world. Somebody gave me a lead to a person when I was working on building a business. I have an acting CFO, business consultants. I mean, these are life-altering connections and friendships. I recently took on one of my health aims to give up eating sugar. It was something I shouldn't be eating for health reasons. And I was struggling with that. And I reached out to somebody in the ecology. And so I set up a consequence with her. And I thought, wow, these people are altering my life. And I really do mean it when I say I could grow old with them. And at first I was kind of embarrassed because, like I said, I never asked for help. But now I call somebody and I'll say, you seem to have achieved this aim with your health or with your money. Can I talk with you and just understand what you're doing and just to have the availability? Because I've been in networking groups and different community groups and support circles, nothing that takes into consideration all of the most important things that I'm working on in my life. And to just have, that's invaluable to me to have, because there's times when the coursework or work got really hard and I thought, okay, I'm going to stop studying. And I thought, no, if I unplug from that, that's like unplugging from my lifeline, because I can see these friendships will be forever. So I hope you all continue growing and doing what you're doing.
I plan on it. I plan on it. It's really great.
Good. I hope so.
It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you so very much. And I look forward to seeing you at the conference next week.
Thank you. Same here. I can't wait to see you all.
As I said in today's talk, we'll hear a segment of a recent Fundamentals of Transaction program classroom webinar. Drew Knowles and I discussed the subject of autonomy. Traditionally, people think of autonomy as a condition of independence, and we reorient our students to think of autonomy as a surplus of help. Here's the talk. Drew, one of the things that you've done such a great job in distinguishing for people here at Influence Ecology is you often talk about having a surplus. So an example might be that you have a surplus of health, fitness. And if you have a surplus of health, then what that means is that you're able to manage the threats to your health in ways that someone who does not have a surplus of health does. So you're able to manage the threats in a different way. When you have a surplus of something in any condition of life, then you're not threatened in the same way that other people are. So if you have a surplus of money, you're not threatened in the same way that other people are. And so one of the ways that we like for you to think about a surplus of help, HELP, is as something that is available to you to produce autonomy. One of the things that I don't think that we often do is make the connection between autonomy and a surplus of help. And I just want to take a second and create that connection, because many people imagine autonomy as that condition where they can do what they want and have what they want, live as they want, and so forth and so on. But no one ever says how you get there. how you get to a condition where you have the freedom to act as you'd like is because you've removed all threat. And how you remove all threat is you have a surplus. In every condition of life, you have a surplus of help. So when there's a breakdown around money, you're not threatened. When you have a breakdown in your career, no problem. I've got a surplus. When you have a breakdown in a relationship, no problem. I have a surplus. You have a surplus in those conditions of life. So autonomy is about having a surplus of help. So Drew, I wanted to connect those dots for just a moment. So anything you want to say to add to that?
Yep, two things. It requires you to take some time to really think about and sit down and look, what would that look like for you? Having a surplus of help, having just taking the condition of life, health, for example. Who do you need? Basically, you use this term in America, but it's like, who do you need in your Rolodex or your address book or your iPhone or whatever it might be, where if just about anything comes along that challenges your health or the health of someone that's very close to you, do you have some very, very professional and successful and specialized people that you can call upon to stave off any threat to your health, or people that can actually call you on if you're not acting as you should regarding your health. And in the domain of money, like you said, John, you have professionals and people that are guiding you, and that it's like all you need to do is follow their advice and do what they say, and you're going to be well taken care of with your money. And I could go on. And one example I love, John, is a friend of both yours and mine, and works in the government, and some media and press came out about them that was inaccurate. And before he could even try and do anything about it to decline or anything, the community that this person had produced so much value in of his health rose up and basically declined it on his behalf. That is what I would call a surplus of career, of identity.
It's very great example.
And I'm not saying this person, maybe now they would, because they really understand career, but I don't think they would have been diligently working on having that surplus of people in such a conscious way that if something came along like that, it would stave off that threat. But you can do that now that you know it, and you can do it consciously. And the last thing I think, John, was this doesn't happen haphazardly. Got to think it out. You've got to spend some time and look, who do you need in your ecology?
Thank you so much for listening today. You'll find new episodes on our website, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, so you may easily share it with others. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or any place that you listen to quality podcasts. Next week on the Influential You podcast, we have Kristen Moeller, and she shares how she learned that magical thinking wasn't going to actually fulfill what she wanted in her life. I hope you'll join us. You may check out our show notes for links to connect with our guests, plus links to websites, books, or special downloads that we talked about on today's episode. This season's podcasts were made possible by the Influential You staff, faculty, and our wonderful members all around the world. With a special thanks to our executive producer, Tyson Crandall, Joey Anderley, our in-studio producer, with contributions from John Patterson, Michael Teehee, Daryl Anderley, Paul West, and Liz Smiley, and a special thanks to our guest, Kim Corbett. And a second special thanks to our in-studio producer. Thank you, Joey. The Influential You podcast is produced in Ventura, California. This episode was originally aired and recorded in November of 2016. The podcast theme is by Chris Dandring, entitled Fast Train to Everywhere. And if you haven't yet offered a rating or review, can you take a moment and just go to iTunes and let us know what you think? This helps us more than you know. We'll see you next time on the Influential You podcast.